Okay. Can you guys tell me about where you lived when you were kids?
I was born in DeKalb and lived there till I was about 5, 6, and then lived in the country in Boone County, and then finished growing up in Belvedere. And stayed there till I was married. So go ahead.
Now let's just do one at a time because we
okay.
only
One
got
at a
two.
time?
We'll
Okay.
have to do
Okay.
later. So
Where did you go to school when you were a kid?
I went to Belvedere schools always. I went to Perry Street School through 6th grade. I went to Lincoln Junior High and then to Belvedere High School for 4 years. And graduated from there in 46.
did she have any good teachers?
I had some very good teachers. I only had a couple that weren't. They're the two I remember.
How did you guys get to school?
We walked to school. The first school we went to, we only probably walked 3 blocks total. But when the weather was bad, we had to go up a hill, and it was a windy spot. But with our brown cotton stockings that we had to wear, we stayed warm enough.
And who were your friends then when you were in school?
Oh goodness, Marion Schindler and Shirley Graham, Mary Kay Saltman. I can't think of it. Oh, Dory Stenerson.
Buddy and Patty?
Yeah, Buzzy and Patty would be 2 also, but they were in high school before. They and Avon and Dawn. Just had a lot of friends. Lots of fun. We lived near the park.
How did you communicate with your friends when you were like long distance communication?
I don't know that I did any long distance. In our day and age, we just sort of were neighborhood kids and played together and that, but as far as long distance, I don't have any that I've communicated.
And back before there was like electricity here.
It was horrible. There was electricity here when I came here in 46, but there was no bathrooms and there was no, there was a shower in the back,
No, not a shower.
I know,
bathtub.
a bathtub in the back, part of the kitchen, a separate part that was on behind the kitchen, and that, but there was no bathroom.
No
and
toilet.
no toilet. The outhouse was, I think, 100 miles out that way, out the back door. And,
24 steps.
well, and it was long haul, and I didn't, after I became pregnant with Bob, I told Grandpa that we had to have a bathroom or I was going back to town. No more bathrooms. So, what was the, that was one of my big concerns when I came to. My sister was sure I wouldn't like the country, because my mother hadn't, and I fell in love with the country, so I never would want to leave the country. My mother couldn't wait to get out of the country and back into Belgium.
Where'd your mother live?
DeKalb. She started in Kentucky. My folks were both from Kentucky,
What part of Kentucky?
near Louisville. Should be able to say and we went there one time with Ann and Red, and went up and found graves of some of our ancestors and so forth in Kentucky, so we knew a little bit more about it than we had as we were growing up.
How did you travel around from place to place?
Car.
Car?
You mean when I was really home and a kid?
Yeah.
On foot. We didn't have a car until I was in high school. My folks did not have a car. When we wanted to go even to DeKalb to visit grandparents and so forth, the fellow that my dad worked for and did shoveling of snow and his furnace in the winter and so forth would let Dad take his car and we'd go to see Grandma in DeKalb, but that's about as far as we ever went.
Do you remember what your car was like?
when we first bought a car. Well, I think, did they have the car before we were married? I
Your
think
folks?
about the same time, yes.
Yeah, they had a car. They drove up to our wedding.
That's right, that's right. And it was, what kind of a car?
I surely don't remember
I
what.
don't know either. I just know that it was,
It was a serviceable car, and
Yeah.
that's about all I had in those days.
but I have no idea if it was a Ford, a Chevy, or what it was. In fact, I don't ever remember riding it because it was about the time I was a junior, senior. And we didn't have a telephone until then, but my brothers were in service. And so mother insisted she had to have a telephone so that boys could call home. And so I was a junior, probably in high school before we had a phone.
Where were your brothers?
In Burma, India, and China was Jack, but Hugh was where he was over in,
Was he in North Africa or Italy?
yes, he was in Africa, but where else?
Italy, probably, that's where they went.
Okay.
North
And he
Africa.
had, he was a true fighting soldier. He ended up back in for being hurt a couple of times and ended up going for R&R and then back to the front lines. He didn't ever,
I lost track. Are we talking about Hugh or Jack?
Hugh,
Hugh.
he
The
never,
oldest in the family.
yeah. Jack mainly drove big trucks and took the India Burma and that. And they were on a mountain and they went across, and all of a sudden some of those trucks would drop over the edge. He had a very nerve-wracking driving job, but taking things to the front lines because when he went to service, he actually went in as an injured. He had polio, so he wasn't considered one that would go to the front lines, but things changed after the war started and he was put in with the rest of them.
The strange thing then, USA was helping China fight against Japan. Now China's the enemy. Japan and the friend, but it's the opposite then.
Okay.
But it was hard seeing him go there.
Where did you guys go on dates back when you were?
Well, we met at a roller skating rink, so that's one of the places. And to movies and not much other.
Went to a few dances.
Oh, yeah. In Rockford, and they had nice,
We went to Chicago once.
they had a roller rink at Rockford too, but we mainly skated at the one in Belvedere.
What was it like?
It was enclosed. It wasn't enclosed. The sides could roll up, and so you could skate in the open air. Nice, beautiful night. But you might be skating in a fairly cool night, but it closed up for the winter. It was just
But later they enclosed it.
later they did enclose it, and then we were able to skate. You could skate all year long, but that's where a lot of people of our age met, because the skating rink and the theater, a few restaurants, and Almonds was a confectionery, but it was a lesser place, but kind of a hamburger joint and that type of thing that was in
a
town.
high school hangout too.
Yes, it was high school
Trying to
hangout.
find out if they always wore their best stuff to the skating rink so they can meet people.
Well,
But the huddle was the main.
we did. We liked to dress in up, and I had one blouse that had white, kind of flowing sleeves and so forth, fancy on the bottom, which made you feel all dressed up and you were ready to go. I don't know that Grandpa thinks that as much as I do, but he's never been the dressy.
I grew up working, not dressing up.
Yeah, but did you dress up to skate? You cleaned up, but I don't know how dressed up you were. That would
No.
be your. I think
It was somewhat, it wasn't.
I pretty much wore my best because that's about what I had to wear, other than what I wore around the house. We didn't have a lot of clothes or a lot of anything, but we were happy.
People
Had
didn't.
plenty of food. Mhm.
People then didn't dress quite as casual as today.
No, nor did they dress quite as fancy. We were more medium something. Nobody went to church in overalls with the knees out and that in our day, but also,
It was more common to wear suits when you went to
right,
church.
right. And even young boys pretty much had to have sport jackets and nice pants when our boys always did for going to Sunday school. But now they don't. You see very few.
And what kind of clothes did you guys wear, like, casually?
They were all pretty much the same. I mean, we had, mother made a number of tops for me, or skirts for me, and I bought tops when I worked like at Almond's Confectionery or at the drugstore to keep the prices down. But then for school, my school clothes were all purchased and that, but they were all pretty casual, just
But those are the days.
tops and nice skirts, and for something a little more dressy, pretty sweater. And
Those are the days of dresses, not slacks.
oh yes, we could only every other day you showed up in a dress. And the year that I started gym first class, when I had a first period, I'd often go to school with my hair rolled up. And when the gym class was over in the shower, then I could comb it out to look nice for all day. But for a number of years, I didn't really take gym because I had a heart murmur all my life. So at that time, I could just dress however, have my hair fixed and stayed fixed.
And,
Jenna, hold on a second.
okay. And what about early jobs? Where did you work?
Oh, my first job was in a drugstore in Belvedere, where I was like 4 blocks from home, and I was 15 years old. We sold school books to the country kids also that people had turned in from their last year, and then we had them to sell for the next ones, and then we had all the new textbooks there to sell. And so that was a busy time, and that's how I actually got started in the drugstore. But I sold everything for perfume, drugs,
But
the
schools
whole
didn't
works.
furnish books.
But schools did not furnish the books. The country kids all came into Belvedere and bought their books usually at the drugstore.
And do you remember, like, around how much did that pay?
Very little. I think I got 30 cents an hour when I started. And also while I worked there, I worked down at the confectionery, Almond's Confectionery. And that was probably 35. That was a little bit better. I worked there mainly on game nights and busy times when he had, and some through the summer. And I left V Coast Drugstore and went across town to Kennedy's Drugstore when I was high school age, when I got to high school. And I worked the 4 years that I went to high school part-time at the Kennedy Drugstore. And that's the extent of my working away from home.
And what was school like?
It was good. I don't know. However, I think that's where you go to make friends, to find out that you have to listen to teachers too. I was never privileged enough to have an instrument or that. And like when I was in 7th and 8th grade and even in high school, I couldn't be in things like in basketball after school or something because I'd go right from school to work. But I needed to work in order to have money to live on. My folks paid for everything else, but if I wanted something, if I had my own money, I could get it. And I did.
What kind of things did you buy with the money
that I earned? Oh, like any cosmetics you wanted, or any lots of times a blouse or some undies or something that was important to you that wasn't necessarily something that the folks had money for. And I was able to go to lunch with any of the girls that didn't want to go across home for the other side of the river for lunch. So I had money to go roller skating and those kinds of things. Probably part of that time was during the war, and shoes were very hard to get. And in fact, they were, I want to say you could only get them when they said you could. And but because I had had polio and my shoes were getting very bad looking, I was able to get a new pair of shoes when I was like a freshman in high school, and it was really one of the big thrills of my life was to have those new shoes, because I was rather embarrassed with the shoes that I had, and yet they were, what did they call that, when you could only get,
What's that?
what'd they call it when shoes
Ration?
rationed? The shoes were rationed, and it was wartime, so. And I was the only one in the family that had that problem, but they were very good to me, and when I went to before the board and was able to get them.
I got a question. Did you ever walk to school across the frozen river?
That's another nice question. Only once, it was forbidden.
But you didn't?
And I did go across
Is it
one
quite a
time,
shortcut?
and it was considerable shortcut.
But
And it
you
was
only-
also very snowy, and I had my boots on. But I only had one boot on when I got across the other side of the river, and there was no going back. I never did it again, so I never
That's
did
all right.
where my boot probably ended up in the river when the water thawed.
It's a little bit dangerous walking.
But it was
across, right?
something that,
You
like
never know
folks,
when you might
it's-
fall through.
but some of the gals were going, and of course I went with them. And that's something, that's a real no-no. Really did.
But
Did
you
you
did
ever
it
hear-
once.
Did you ever hear about anybody falling into the river when they crossed it?
Oh, yes, we've had people in the river, but not,
Not
and
with-
drowned. A boy at the end of my parents' street drowned in the river when Bob was a little friend of his.
But that was
and
summertime.
So forth, yes, that was summertime, but it
Never
was
took-
a river that was considerably
I never
a
took
threat.
the-
Kids had to be taught to live by a river, and that boy didn't do what he should have done either. And I was the lucky one.
And what was it like working during the war and all
It
that?
wasn't really much different. About the only time that when people would come in and want to get things or ship them or send airmail letters and that, being a drugstore, we had a place there that you could get money orders and things to do. And we hear about some of their sad experiences and that. But it really didn't affect my being.
Okay. And what about when you came out to the farm?
I graduated from Belvedere High School in June 11 of 46, and I came to the farm, or I was married June 22nd, 46. And I didn't actually spend time on the farm for a month after we were married, because we took a month honeymoon and went north to California and came back to South Road. And arrived home about a month later, July probably 21st. And I guess because Don's folks had not moved out yet, they had planned to, but their house wasn't ready on Popper Road. We were here with them for the first few months, and that was rather difficult, being a new bride and not doing things just the way she thought they ought to be done. But we survived it and went on to saying we were going back to California in 10 years. It was actually 25, and the boys sent us there for our 25th anniversary. And so a lot of open area out here where I was used to having neighbors' houses be much closer. And there was just the two of us here and no nearby neighbors that I knew or anything. But we had the car, we were close to Belvedere, and I had a lot of family. And so even though there were a few times that you were a little lonesome for town again, it was very few. And shortly the boys came, and then there was no time for that anyway. It was busy here on the farm and enjoying it.
So it must have been quite a change coming out here.
Oh, a terrific change. But one that I really liked.
Mhm.
And I think that's the thing. I stayed in touch with all my friends and Belvedere and that, for a lot of years, and I still go to class, lunch with them and so forth, those few that are left, and so, in Belvedere, um, and I made all the class reunions and worked on even heading a couple of the big ones and that, and it was, so school was important, coming out here was important, but keeping those things intact. And that's what I think, you have to have a balanced life.
I don't think I have any more questions.